Bang! Neves Knives. I'm Jared. My lovely wife, Kara, is busy, and we're doing the full review on the Hinderer Firetac with the TRIWAY pivot, the good and bad review. Joseph, thank you for letting me check this out, and also thank you for using my sharpening service. He did have me sharpen this for him, and we'll go into sharpening here in a minute, but thank you, Joseph. I appreciate you and everybody that that helps support us by using our service and, letting me check out knives, and also through Patreon and any way that people support us. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Now, this knife is a full-size knife with a 3.5-inch 20 CV blade, 8 1/4 overall. Now, let's check out it against the Hinderer XM18. They're the same length as the Hinderer XM18 and the Sebenza. So the Chris Reeves Sebenza, but I feel like it's kind of a mixture between these two knives in a way. Now we'll get more into that, I guess, here as we move along, or maybe you'll see it, kind of as we go. But you can kind of see it just by looking at it. It's a lot more of a sleeker knife, kind of like an EDC-able Hinderer. Now this one does have an aftermarket scale. He did send me the G10 scale, but I'm not going to switch it. I think this is just fine for the review. Now this one is on the TRIWAY pivot, like we said. And if you don't know what the TRIWAY pivot is, they basically send you 3 different types of pivots or 3 different types of washers. So you have the phosphor bronze washers, Teflon washers, or bearings. You can pick whichever one you want to put on and change it later if you want. And this one right now is on bearings. The action is amazing on this thing. Now with thumb discs, they're hit or miss because they have to be placed properly, and the detent has to be perfect for them to work. Now in this case, they knocked it out of the park. The distance right here between the thumb stud and the scales is perfect. They have this little chamfer right here, and when I have it in my hand, right where I want to place my thumb is exactly where it needs to go, and it works perfectly. Now, same thing for the reverse flick. When I have it in my hand, right where I want to put my finger, that's right where it needs to be, and right where it works best. So that's not easy for companies to get right with discs, because discs are thin. And if you look, you'll see the texturing on the disc. So if the detent isn't correct, and if it's not placed right in the perfect spot, then it doesn't work very good. And you'll listen to the detent on this one. Nice and clicky, but not overly strong. I can easily slow roll it. And the sounds are also very satisfying. Now, when you unlock it, the lock bar doesn't have the best access to it. You kind of got to go around to the front and put pressure on the front. And then after you put pressure, slide your finger this way. That's how you have to unlock it, because you can't come from the side here unless you kind of like squeeze your finger in like that and kind of push at an angle. But the detent is pretty late. It's actually right there, but it really doesn't matter because this doesn't have a flipper. Since it's on thumb discs, it's not that big of a deal. Or you can, just unlock it and use your finger right here and slap it shut. Some people like to do the little grip from the back, where they put the finger on the back and use their pointer finger. Either way, very, very fidgety, very satisfying, and yeah, I enjoyed the action a lot, especially for a thumb disc, because, like I said, thumb discs are hit or miss. Either you get them right or you get them wrong, and 90% get them wrong, absolutely wrong. This is a drop point recurved blade. Now, I was a little worried about the choil. We'll get into that when we get into the sharpening, but let's talk about cutting really quick. So when cutting, it's okay. It cuts good, but not great. Or should I say it cuts okay, but not good or great. Let's say it like that. Behind the edge thickness is about 24,000, so it's not thin behind the edge. And it's got a pretty thick blade stock for, an EDC knife. Now it still works. It works just fine. You can absolutely make a cut. It's not a big deal, but it's not the greatest slicer. Now let's talk about for utility cuts. For utility cuts, it works if you lift it all the way up, but otherwise it's not the best utility cutter. You just don't get the leverage into the cuts that you really want from a utility cut. You usually don't want to aim your arm really up too high to do a utility cut, because you lose leverage every bit you go straight up and down with a knife. Now, that being said, that if you do hold it straight up and down and you get the right grip, you can do decent utility cuts, you know, because of the ergos. And so it will get you by. So it's basically for cutting and for utility cuts, it works. You know, it's not going to be great for either one, but it works. So now let's talk about the ergos, because that's where it winds up working out. The ergos are so good in the hand that it works, man. It feels great in the hand, and it just feels great in the hand. And you have the disc right here that you can lay your hand on or your thumb to put pressure. So you do have a lot of pressure behind your cuts. It's just that the blade itself isn't passing through amazingly well. But when it comes to gripping in every direction, especially like pulling straps, and even in the utility cuts, you got good places to really place your fingers to get the cut done. So that's awesome. Now let's talk about this clip really quick, because we have a bunch I want to get into. So the clip, great in the pocket. One of the best clips ever, in my opinion. Yes, it's not deep, or no, it's not deep carry, but that's kind of the beauty of this clip, because it works so good in the hand. You barely feel it in the hand. It goes in and out of the pocket effortlessly. And one of the biggest things that I love about a good working clip is the ability to get it out and get it open, get it close, put it back in the pocket. I love the ability to slide it out of my pocket, get it open. So I pull it out, get it open, make my cut, get it back in the pocket. That works so good with this. It's just so easy, and like I said, it's effortless, and it works really good. It makes other knives seem difficult to use, going in and out of the pocket into action. So out of the pocket into action, it works so good. Now let's talk about sharpening it, because you know, it didn't have the best edge, and I know why. It wasn't like they had a bad sharpening job or anything. It was because of the angle, and I didn't change it much, and I'll explain more into that here in a second. But I did sharpen it up, and let's get into that. So here's the factory edge. The edge angle wasn't very good. It was pretty shallow. It was definitely a high degree, or a low degree, I should say. And here is how you normally sharpen a recurve. You want to use smaller, thinner stones so that it can get across the belly without leaving gaps, because you have to be able to hit in that belly area. So this is how I would do it if I had to, or this is one way I do sharpen my recurves. I'm not a huge fan of the round stones, unless if you have a whole bunch of different grits, you know, from a low grit all the way up to a high grit. But this is one way I would have sharpened it, and it would have worked just fine. But in this case, I actually used a Benchstone, and what I did was I rode the corner. So basically what I'm doing is I'm focusing all my efforts into the corner of the stone. These are venev diamond stones, so they actually cut really well. Now, I didn't bring this up to a mirror polish or anything like that, and it has to do with a few things of the angle and the type of shape, you know, with the recurve and everything. I felt like a lower grit would serve this knife a little bit better than a polished edge. If I could have laid the edge back, then I would have, but just with the way this blade is, it's not really that possible. So stropping it, I basically just do the same thing as with the stone. I ride the edge. In this case, I do have other strops that are for recurves, but I don't have no issue just riding the corner. And let's take a look at it. So like I said, I did not put a polished edge on here. I put a little bit of a lower grit on here so that it kept a lot of bite. I definitely would have brought it up to a higher polish finish if I could have laid the edge back. But all in all, this thing sharpened up really good, came out really good. The steel felt really good on the stone, and the edge is nice and flat. And yeah, it turned out really nice considering. And yeah, I'm really happy with it. Now, the reason why I did not change this angle, and we'll take a look at this edge really quick. I didn't bring it to a mirror finish. And the reason why is because the angle is shallow. It's like, I'm not 100% sure, I didn't exactly measure, but it's over 20 thousandths, 20 degrees per side. Being 25 thousandths behind the edge, you want to be able to lay back the edge, but it's not going to look right. And because of the choil they gave you, they didn't give you a lot of room to lay the edge back without making a smile like this on the Benchmade 940. You see how it has a smile right there. You don't want to do that. Now, you're only going to get a few sharpenings in before that starts to happen. So I'm not excited about this choil, but it did work just fine for the first sharpening and probably for the next 2 sharpenings. Maybe more, maybe less. But the point is laying the edge back and changing the degrees, it's, you know, one, it might look a little funny because of it being such a shallow blade and it being so thick. You know, being, thick. Not that it's crazy thick, but you don't have a lot of tallness here, so it would make the edge bevel go back really far and up this way. So, I kept it right around the same angle. I just put a better, sharper edge than what it was. So it does cut better than it did, but still not as good as you'd like. Let's talk about some more bad things. They do use multiple different types of hardware. All Hinderers do, so that's kind of just a thing you deal with when you have Hinderers. It's not that big of a deal, but you are gonna usually need a whole toolbox when you take apart a Hinderer. This one's only using 2 different ones, I think, Phillips and Allen, but I do like that it's the same Allen going down. These do protrude right here a little bit. As you can see, this kind of protrudes out. I don't know why they didn't do that flush. Not that big of a deal, but it's just, I don't know why they wouldn't just do that flush. Now, another thing is, like I was saying before about the geometry, I wish the geometry was thinner. I think 15 thousandths would have been great. I think behind the edge, 15 thousandths and maybe a little bit thinner blade stock. Now, even with this thick of a blade stock, the tape or the geometry is just not great. And this is supposed to be their EDC knife. So I don't know why they wouldn't take advantage of this. And I know this knife's been out for a long time, not the TRIWAY version, but the whole knife in general. But I would like to see better geometry, especially on the EDC style knife. Their XM18 would be their hard use, then this would be their EDC. Now, the access to the lock bar, yes, it's not that big of a deal because the tension isn't that strong, and since it's not that strong, it does, make it very easy to use. But it would be nice to have a little access this way. Now, it's lined up perfectly flat with this, and you have to basically put tension or wedge your finger in there. And it's, not that big of a deal because the tension's not that strong. So, and I can easily do it left-handed, so it's obviously not that big of a deal. And I can do it pretty quickly left-handed, or maybe not oh yeah, I can, bang. But the bad on this is there's not a lot of bad here. This is really good overall, and I really, really like this knife. So many things, from the stone washing that's beautifully done. I mean, such good stone washing, even on the titanium. It's just well done. Even on the titanium bronze, you know, because it's a bronze anode. It's beautiful, man. The lockup is rock solid. I mean, this thing is as solid as can be. The lock face geometry is really nice. They didn't stonewash it. You can see how they didn't stonewash it, and it works really good. You can see it has good geometry on the lock. The stop pin, nice and big. I love that it's so big. You have basically a straight shot from here to here, so it has a lot of potential to stay very, very strong. It has a little tiny bit of shouldering on the stop pin. There's just so many things are really good on this. There's just a couple things that would have just knocked it out of the park. Now let's talk about this being a recurve, because that's kind of an issue, but it's not. So it's like, I don't know whether or not to put it on the bed, because it's such a subtle recurve that you're really not getting the benefits of a recurve. But it's such a subtle recurve that you're not getting the benefits out of a drop point. You know, like if you're going to use a flat stone, you're going to have to ride the edge, if you're, you know, or use little stones to sharpen this. So for sharpening, you're getting the, you know, the worst parts of a recurve. But for cutting performance, you're really not getting all the benefits. You're getting a little bit, but not much. So I'm kind of confused of why they used or decided to use a recurve on this. Now, I did hear that in the future they are going to come out with other blade shapes. I'm not sure how true that is, but I heard in the future they will. It just might be a year or two. I don't know. But regardless, a regular drop point would have been great on this. But it's not that big of a deal. You are going to get a little bit better cutting performance with drag cuts, because the material will get caught in the belly, or, you know, in the recurve part. And so that will benefit you with, you know, draw cuts. Now, like I said, it is going to be a little, I don't think it's that difficult to sharpen recurves, but some people do have difficulties, and it's not going to be, you know, as easy as laying it on the Benchstone and just going. You are going to have to, like I said, ride the edge or have smaller stones. But there is ways to get around that. I've shown it in lots of videos, how you can use the corners of a stone, and there's lots of ways to sharpen recurves, and they're really not that hard. Now, all in all, great knife. I like this knife so much. I think they did so many things right. And it's just a great EDC knife. Like I said, it rides in the pocket so good. In the pocket, it just feels good. It feels comfortable. Pulling it out of the pocket and getting it into action, it feels very good. Closing it up and putting it back in the pocket is really nice. It looks good. It's a solid knife. It's USA made, 20 CV blade steel. That did feel pretty good. You know, I can't say what the heat treat is or anything, but it felt pretty good. The edge retention seems really good on it. I didn't have any issues even with the factory edge, but yeah, aside from it not being that sharp, and like I said, you know, if, you know, to lay the edge back would benefit this knife a lot. It's just hard to lay the edge back without it possibly looking ugly. I love you guys. Thank you guys for watching. Joseph, thank you for letting me check this thing out. I was really happy to check this out and excited to finally get a Firetac in hand. I've heard so much about them, so thank you, brother, and thank you guys for watching. Peace.